Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Magic gameplay. This time around we are on the Ashen Hall, playing as the mighty Dawi against the forces of the Greenskins. So, definitely, in this matchup I did want to try out a build that was very much centered around Ironbreakers, and figuring that they could actually prove pretty potent against the Orcs. If you look at the Ironbreaker stat line, it's definitely, offensively it's nothing impressive. Melee attack of 30 is okay, but nothing too crazy. Weapon strength of only 32, though surprisingly decent AP at 10. But really, of course, where Ironbreakers really shine is in the defensive, and they've got satchel charges to disrupt charges and to destroy squishy infantry units. They've got, and they even have actually 2 rounds of ammo on them, so they can definitely get a big burst with their satchel charges. 125 armor, bronze shields. Not the most amazing HP per model, not even sitting at 100 per model quite, but they do have 68 melee defense, which means that even Black Orcs, who have got, if you look at it, those are the Crimson Killers, but if you look at normal unit Black Orcs, they only have 36 melee attack default. So if you do, given that the baseline chance to hit is only 35%, that means that Ironbreakers actually drop Black Orcs to the minimum chance to hit with their 68 melee defense. And that's just vanilla Ironbreakers. That's not the level if you level them up. The Gremlins Ironbreakers are sitting at 82 melee defense, can basically shrug off anything Black Orcs throw at them. Now, obviously, they won't win in the long run. Gremlins Ironbreakers might due to their higher HP pool, but Ironbreakers themselves will not win against Black Orcs in the long run, simply because they don't hit hard enough. And of course, Black Orcs do hit pretty hard, and as we discussed, these guys don't have the greatest HP pools, but nonetheless, they will hold for a very long time. And if the Orcs bring any chaff infantry at all, the Ironbreakers will crush them in melee. They are backed here by 2 units of miners with blasting charges on the flanks, as well as a single unit of miners in the back, so just providing some extra support and extra width. And of course, for my lord, I did bring a Rune Lord. Now, as you'll notice, I didn't actually bring any heroes, so going very light on in the hero department. I brought a Rune Lord, and that is specifically for the Locus of Power, figuring that if my opponent brings Azag, if he brings Lore of Death in particular, or even if he brings, say, Foot of Gork, I want to have that resistance, that extra magic resistance, giving everybody on the map, for my army, total 40% magic resist. I also do have the Master Rune of Grungni, providing 20% missile resist, Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, as well as the Master Rune of Negation. So trying to get extra tankiness, just make this front line invincible. Now, on the flanks, we do have unit Slayers as well as Dragonback Slayers, of course, to defend a very strong shooting contingent. 2 Bugman's Rangers to zone away enemy archers, to help protect the range of the great weapons, and to pressure long-range enemy units if needed. And then 2 units of Rangers with the great weapons, as well as the Ulthar's Raiders. And you may be wondering why I bring these, but it's because they have a very high AP burst. They can arc over your troops, and I figured that if my opponent brings some Black Orcs, I'll be able to mow them down very quickly with the Rangers with the great weapons, and that will free up the rest of my line to deal with other things. Now, for my opponent's build, very wide and very interesting sort of composition. He does have Azag up in the sky, so definitely was not a bad idea to bring that extra magic resist. He does have Fatal Buna and Life Leeching, so decent all around there. He's got Wa, of course, for that extra melee attack boost, which will help bust through the Ironbreaker's high melee defense. He's a decent melee combatant, though definitely not amazing. Definitely somewhere around the tier of the Rune Lord, honestly. Though he does have AP and Poison, which the Rune Lord does not. He also does have, he is backed here by 2 units of Black Orcs as well as the Crimson Killers, so definitely a very strong sort of core of my opponent's army, which can chew through Ironbreakers over time, and of course will crush any of my other infantry units in melee, but of course very susceptible to the throwing axes. They are backed by an Orc Shaman, which provides an extension of the Wa through his Here We Go, which is basically a longer duration Wa that costs 11 Winds of Magic, so incredibly potent spell. He also does have Power of the Wa, so my opponent trying to maximize his Winds of Magic. On the flanks, my opponent does have some other tools. He's got the Hammer of Gork, so Goblin Artillery. I don't think this is actually a very good pick against Dwarves, because if they decide to bring, say, Rock Lobber, they can rout your crew off pretty quickly, in my opinion. If you're going with a lot of artillery pieces, it might be more viable, but I think that if you're just bringing one, it might be a bit risky. Regardless, we'll see how they perform. They are backed here by some nasty Skulkers, providing a zoning tool, and on the flanks, my opponent does have a Goblin Big Boss, and actually on foot by the look of it, providing moral support for a Goblin contingent on the flank, including Night Goblins, the Warlords of Boys, so the Regiments of Renown, nasty Skulkers, and then the Rusty Heirs and some Night Goblin Archers. So my opponent went very wide here, but trying to converge on my big blob of infantry here. Now, almost immediately, I see my opponent's artillery. It's already chipping away at my Ironbreakers. I can't really let it just keep firing, because that would be a disaster. So I'm pushing in, trying to get rid of it. You can see some artillery shots will start falling in every now and then, doing a little bit of damage, doing some chip damage on those Ironbreakers. But I make a big mistake here. My opponent, you can see, the Crimson Killers are over here. And what I end up doing is, as you can see the line, my Ironbreakers are here, here, and here. So Oh, and I actually forgot to mention, my opponent had some trolls. I actually spotted the trolls when I was in game. Alongside a Squig Herd, he's got him camped out here in the woods. So additional sort of monster-based AP unit blob that could potentially push out and jump me and provide some pressure. So I actually forgot to mention those. But regardless, you can see my deployment here definitely a bit iffy. You can see the miners on the flanks. And what I should have done is I should have moved my whole battle line to the left, so that way the Ironbreakers would be taking the entire brunt of the Black Orc charge. Instead, what I do here is a major mistake, allow the miners here to be the ones who bear the hatred from the Black Orcs, and that is a huge mistake on my part, and it's something I'm going to pay for pretty badly here. Now, my opponent probably trying to hit the Ironbreakers, cast a Fate of Bune on the Rangers with Great Weapons, who were overextended slightly as I was pushing up. But you can see the Bugman's Rangers here trying to push to the flank to start peppering away at the Hammer of Gork. In the meantime, you can see Satchel Charge coming down the Crimson Killers as you can shortly see, there's a Master of Wrath and Nurin going down these Black Orcs and doing some chip damage. Definitely going to bring them down a bit. In the meantime, you can see the Fate of Buna did quite a bit of damage to the range with Great Weapons, but they do still have all 60 models, and my Ironbreakers are going to start pushing into the Black Orcs. They'll time down. A bit of a mistake here in the fact that I didn't get my charge defense off, but you know what? It's okay. Over here, the Quarrelers, or the Bugman's Rangers, are going to tear through the Nasty Skulkers rather effectively, but shortly I'm going to get the Slayers in there, and I'm going to shift fire to the backline, to the Hammer of Gork, which is still being a major nuisance. Fortunately, you can see the Rangers with Great Weapons. You're getting annihilated by the Hammer of Gork. I do hit the Crimson Killers with Marked by Ulthar, which will debuff their armor a bit, making it easier for Ironbreakers to do some work, as well as making it much easier for the Rangers to do some extra damage. In the meantime, the Rune Lord is pushing into the left flank here, but due to my major mistake here with the miners, due to the fact that I didn't shift my whole line, I've got two Ironbreakers squandered here fighting with the Crimson Killers, while Slayers are being tied down and slaughtered by Goblins. My opponent with 3 units of Goblins, one of which is Unbreakable, will easily be able to manhandle these Slayers, especially with his arrow support and the big boss in the fray. And of course, these miners can't hold their ground, so really my opponent is going to buckle my flank here and collapse on my troops and just start slaughtering through my backline. Fortunately, I do still have this unit of miners, but they are being pushed forward to try to help against these monsters. The Slayers overextended a little bit, but they are going to turn around. You can see the Dragonback Slayers are going to jump into these trolls and start chopping them to bits. My opponent actually stops here with the Squig Herd. Probably was intending to just push up a little bit. This will end up actually rampaging the Squig Herd. You can see they go out of control, and they're going to attack the Dragonback Slayers, which is a big mistake. Unfortunately for my opponent, the Crimson Killers here getting annihilated by those throwing axes. They have such high burst damage, they'll do okay. Unfortunately, you can see the Rangers of the Great Weapons getting piled through by the spinning Goblins, spinning Loons, and that's going to do quite a bit of damage. Now, fortunately for my opponent, though, some Ironbreaker Satchel Charges do go into the Night Goblins, and they'll do some damage. But you can see the Ironbreakers, while they are holding strong, the miners are not. The miners are collapsing, and they're getting slaughtered in the pits. And the Slayers, while they will do some work against Nasty Skulkers, will eventually not be able to deal with the Goblin Big Boss. For my opponent's part of things, the Black Orcs are routed. One Ego was active, which took it out of the fight. And you can see these miners being wasted, being squandered, when I really need them here in the backline defending against Night Goblins. And it's a major mistake for me, and it's a major problem. You can see over here the Bugman's Rangers trying their best, and I realized that I'm not able to stop these Night Goblins. I pulled the Bugman's Rangers offline to try to stop the Night Goblins as best I can. Rangers, of course, can't kite Goblins. Goblins are fast enough to chase them down, so I really should have been just kept kiting, and I just didn't stand on my micro. These guys are going to get poisoned, they're going to get caught, and they're going to start taking a beating. Rangers won't outduel Night Goblins like these, the AP Gloonies, really, at all. Now, you can see the Bugman's Rangers here will continue doing some chip damage, continue chipping away the Black Orcs. You can see the Ironbreakers are finally cleared, having slaughtered the Crimson Killers for the most part. You can see the Dragonback Slayers coming back into the fray. The Black Orcs over here heavily mauled. They did manage to beat up some miners, but you know what? That's okay. My opponent is getting his trolls back into the fray, and he does have some Nasty Skulkers and the Goblobber crew back there. Fortunately, the Blastic Chargers are not doing the biggest of favors here, as they are really messing up my Rangers. But the Bugman's Rangers will start chipping away. They will tear through Night Goblins themselves due to their decent, if uninspiring, melee stats. Over here in the pits, you can see the Slayers over here getting chipped away, slaughtered by the Archers, despite doing a surprising amount of damage when they push through. But over here, the Black Orcs will be manhandled by the mix of the Rune Lord as well as the Norgulins Ironbreakers and Ironbreakers. Unfortunately, this does mean my backline is heavily compromised. Bugman's Rangers and Dragonback Slayers doing their very best to deal with Azag and this Goblin Big Boss. While over here, the Bugman's Rangers are saving their Ranger buddies in melee. And of course, the fact that Bugman's Rangers are immune to psychology is going to be an incredible boon here, because it means they're not going to route to Azag and to his Terror Bombs, which normal Rangers would have routed a long time ago. Much less, of course, other sort of Dawi units, Quarrelers and all those units would route. Now, Bugman's Rangers finally do route, but not before taking a massive beating. And of course, they do have that built-in regen, so as they flee, they will recover, they will replenish some of their HP, and they'll be able to bounce back with some models. Over here, you can see the Rune Lord holding his own, providing that extra melee defense and extra support for his Ironbreakers. And this core of Ironbreakers is basically unbreakable for my opponent. He no longer has the Black Orcs resources to really do this. Only the Warlords boys don't stand a chance. These Black Orcs are far too low. Nasty Skulkers are a joke against the Ironbreakers. Granted, they will get a proc of their ability. They'll get they'll get, what is it called? I forget, Opportunist Murder procced, but that's not going to help against Ironbreakers. They're just way too tanky, and my opponent's getting pounded here pretty badly. And the Rusty Arrows don't have that much ammo. They're down to 10 rounds at this point, and once ammo runs out, they're not going to be able to do the job. Norcom's Ironbreakers and the Ironbreakers have way too much HP left. Now over here you can see the Night Goblins are finally breaking. They're down to 3 models. You can see some throwing axes going down on Azag from multiple angles. 50, despite everything, despite being low on models, the Rangers are still a pretty brutal force. They are able to chip them down pretty quick. Over here the Night Goblins are going to get into the fray, and a bit of a mistake here. I should have definitely charged into them and just gotten rid of them. You can see some throwing axes there wasted. But over on the flanks, the Squigs are actually going to get into my backline. Once again, not paying attention. I should have been paying more attention. Got the Bugmans on him, but I don't, and so my opponent is going to get away. Azag, of course, pops Foe Seeker, flies off, and I promptly kill a lot of my Bugman's Rangers with satchel charges. So huge mistake on my part. You can see a lone Dragonback Slayer on 10 HP here, hacking and slashing at the big boss, who is on foot. So the Dragonback Slayer is not in an optimal position there, but with the miners there, I should be able to disentangle myself. Over here, the Squig Herd is kind of rampaging around, destroying my backline, being an incredibly annoying nuisance and potent force here. I do get a few more picks on the Squigs before they close the gap. Once they're on top of the Rangers, things are going to be very grim. I do believe these Rangers might be able to come out on top, though. Over in the pits, of course, the Ironbreakers don't give a crap. They're way too powerful to be dealt with by Night Goblins. But unfortunately, my Rune Lord, I accidentally overextended, and he's going to get dove upon by Azag. And despite his decent sort of melee stats, he does hit Azag in return, I do believe, but he's definitely going to get pounded on. And of course, Azag's poisoning him, he's debuffing him, I can't escape. And Azag actually pops Wa to get that bonus attack. And he's going to be laying the smackdown here on my Rune Lord, who does pop Master Negation to keep himself afloat. And he's not really attacking him, I'm not entirely sure why. I'm not sure why he's not able to attack Azag, but nonetheless, he's getting encircled here and beating down pretty quick, despite all his survivability upgrades going off. Over here, the Bugman's Rangers do start chipping away at those monsters, and Goblin Big Boss is routed, and you can see that Squigs actually got slaughtered in the pits in what was a pretty tight match, but Ulthar's Raiders ultimately do come out on top. My opponent's still forgotten about the Hammer of Gork here, so this crew could have been making a huge difference in the game, but they're still sitting around over there doing nothing. Azag takes a little bit of volley. I make a big mistake here, just leaving these miners to sit around. That's a mistake on my part. I do finally realize I'm simply not able to catch these gobos, so I turn the Ironbreakers around. I'm trying to save my Rune Lord here in a bit of a desperate effort. I do get the Ulthar's Raiders to turn around here, and they will start throwing their axes a little bit. I do get unmarked by Ulthar on top of the Trolls, and you can see they are going to get bursted down rather quickly despite their regen. Though, of course, the Ulthar's Raiders are pretty badly beat up, and they're going to get closed on by the Night Gobos, which is going to be GG for them. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, I still have some miners. I still do have the Bugman's Rangers and the Lone Slayer, who is coming in here to interfere. You can see I get a nasty volley here on the Orc Shaman, doing quite a bit of work. He completely shatters, so that's going to take some magic off my opponent's, sort of equipment. And over here you can see the Bugman's Rangers continue their brave stand on 41 models, slugging it out with Trolls, slugging it out with the Goblin Big Boss as the Ironbreakers try to make their way back. And definitely a little bit of Benny Hill action here. You can see the Miners holding up against Nasty Skulkers and Black Orcs, and not only are they holding up, they are winning. So Black Orcs don't have the best of melee defense, so Miners, despite not having very good melee stats, actually have a decent, will do a disproportionate amount of damage against Black Orcs compared to other cheap chaff infantry. Let's see where the Black Orcs do rout, as do Nasty Skulkers. Of course, with the Ironbreakers in the field, my opponent is trying to just buy himself a little bit of time here. You get the Rusty Airs in there, trying to whittle down the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers, but obviously they don't care much at all against this sort of fire. They're getting poisoned, but who really cares? They're Norgrimlings Ironbreakers. They're basically indestructible to Goblin Arrow Fire. Here in the pits, the Ironbreakers do tie down the Goblin Big Boss, who they're slowly but surely beating down. You can see I still have a fairly healthy unit of Bugman's Rangers, still at half models, who are chipping away at Azag. And Azag obviously is not the best armored. He's only got about 70 armor. So if I'm able to kind of hit him enough and get those hits in, I might be able to rout him. In the pits, my opponent does try to engage here with the Rusty Arrows, and he does still have a handful of Gobos somewhere, but at this point it's simply an end game, as he doesn't have the tools to break me. So, in this matchup, I definitely paid for my own sort of initial deployment, and that is a big problem with this build. It's not a bad build against Orcs, I don't think, because with the Rune Lord in there, your opponent will at most probably get like 2 Fated Bunas in, but if your opponent brings Black Orcs, the Rangers with the Great Weapons will annihilate him incredibly quickly, and if they bring a Goblin Firing Line, you can shut that down pretty hard with the Bugman's Rangers. So you definitely have the tools in here to deal with Orcs, no matter what they bring. And Ironbreakers, even if hit by Fated Buna, will still be tanky, and obviously a Fated Buna cut down by 40% is nowhere near as brutal. But I made a huge mistake, and I allowed my Miners with Blasting Charges to get caught by Black Orcs, and obviously that was a huge boon for my opponent. And what I really should have done is moved my whole battle line to the flank, made sure that the Ironbreakers took the brunt of the Black Orc charge, And that would have instantly given me a huge boost. That would have meant those miners were in position to intercept the goblins. The goblins couldn't have pushed around the flank. The throwing axes could have done more damage, which would have gotten the Black Orcs off the field faster, and everything would have just snowballed much more in my favor, I think. So I definitely think this is a pretty competitive build. The Rune Lord provides you with the buffs you need. Orcs don't have great cav. Their light cav is squishy and honestly even warded off, even by rangers, much less Bugman's rangers. They'll kind of ward off the cheaper cav, except for Squig Hoppers maybe and Boar Boys. But against Boar Boys, they're slow. You can get Dragonback Slayers on them and Slayers, and Bugman's rangers can get some shots into those sorts of units and gun them down. Ironbreakers are basically indestructible for anything the Orcs bring except Black Orcs, maybe Giants and an Arachnarok Spider. But besides, obviously Rock Lobbers, but besides some very specific units, there's not much Orcs can do to shut down Ironbreakers. So you can kind of exploit that fact and use Ironbreakers to just hold the line to tank things out while your Bugman's Rangers and the Rangers do the main heavy lifting. Miners, decent filler unit. I don't think they're a bad choice at all here. And the Slayers definitely paid for themselves. Or, well, maybe they didn't pay for themselves actually, but they definitely did an okay job. They definitely held their own for a while. For my opponent's build, interesting take on things with the Hammer of Gork being brought in as the sole artillery piece. As far as my opinion on the build, I think it might just be my opinion, but I think definitely a little bit of cavalry can do the Orcs quite a bit of good. I also don't think Crimson Killers are a very good pick in just about any matchup. They're simply far too easy to shut down with focused ranged fire. Even though I say brought Thunderers or units like that, I think the Hammer of Gork is also a very iffy pick, and so did the Troll. Like all these sort of this little L of units here, I think is a very iffy pick against the Dwarves. If your opponent brings Goblobber, which is a pretty common pick in this matchup, the Hammer of Gork will simply be routed off in a few volleys. You're going to get almost no value out of it. Obviously, if my opponent had gone for a Rock Lobber build, which is viable, and you do occasionally see these, and it's tough to deal with for the Dwarves, then it could have been a problem. But alone, there's very little the Orcs can really. It's not going to pay for itself. Troll's interesting pick, but once again, I think they're a bit iffy against Bugman's Rangers. I think my opponent actually got more out of these units than you normally would, just because I really botched my initial deployment. So against a player who's more aware of that sort of stuff, it's definitely, I think, a little iffy. Otherwise, I do think it's a pretty decent build. Definitely nasty in a lot of ways, very sneaky, and at the same time providing that sort of blunt force core with the Orcs or with the Black Orcs. So definitely, I think pretty decent. Just like I said, I would definitely look into swapping these units out. If you could get some units of Squig Hoppers in there, I think they're a better choice than Squig Herd and Trolls. If you're going for more I'd drop the Black Orcs or Crimson Killers in favor of just normal Black Orcs. Then that would let you squeeze in some extra troops between dropping the Hammer of Gork and cramming in some Crimson Killers. Or if you want to go for more artillery-based play, basically just scrap the Black Orcs entirely and bring Goblins. But that's a matter of playstyle at that point. But definitely more cavalry, I think, would have been a good choice here. And perhaps cramming in, perhaps cramming in an extra unit of Black Orcs in there would have been good, because you could drop the Trolls and the Squig Herd in favor of, I do believe you could cram in 2 Squig Hoppers for the cost of these two. And then, I think they're 2 times 650, so you could do it. And then drop the Hammer of Gork and the Crimson Killers, which would allow you to cram in, an extra unit of Black Orcs, I do believe, because Crimson Killers are 1,400, if I remember correctly. So I think you should be able to cram in 4 units of Black Orcs here if you drop the Hammer of Gork. So I think definitely that's kind of a shift I'd make for Mr. Pete here. But otherwise, I think good build, very well played. Definitely outflanked me and provided me with a nasty shock with that mob of goblins. So definitely a lot of fun. And I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do hope you found it entertaining and got to watch that come down right to the wire. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you for watching. If you have any comments, criticisms, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I'll respond as soon as I can. And I hope to see you all in the next one. So, bye for now.